So for some time I've wanted to do a video on the computer solicitation statutes. And because I guess they're mostly perhaps the most abused statutes in my opinion. And the way that they are being used is to capitalize on the vast amount of abyss that exists, which the police have long taken advantage of whenever there's a new system, a new technology, a new law. They abuse the hell out of it right up until the end, when the court finally is forced to rein it in, and the court usually is forced to rein it in when it gets to the point where the public just has enough. So in our case, it may be the case that a powerful person's family is messed up, screwed over, taken advantage of, or some such thing. So computer solicitation in Virginia is 18.2-374.3, and the statute reads pretty much similar to what it does in other places, and that is it says that you cannot take proposed sex to any child. You cannot take a picture and send it, expose yourself to a child, or anything related to, if you will, corrupting a minor. And that's fine. But of course, the way it's being used is very different than what it was intended to be. Because the idea is you set up an assignation with a child, but here it does not matter. Because even though they set meeting with somebody as a critical element in their 5-step program or so, not to mention sending pictures, etc., what they have been increasingly doing is going ahead and just merely asserting that to a judge. Increasingly, courts are not interested in computer analysts coming in and having something to say about it. They're not interested in anything at all except what the police and the prosecution says about it. And how do we know this? Because we've looked at dozens and dozens and hundreds of cases, and this is what we see over and over again. So the first element of that law, which is to propose sex to a minor, let's address that. Well, in my case, as in many others, they didn't propose sex to a minor at all. And you have to ask yourself, if the police are on doing proactive stings, why on earth are they coming on these sites and claiming to be an adult, doing an adult profile, putting an adult age, and then at the last minute they appear to be simply taking that down and saying, oh, by the way, I'm 15. If you were really looking for children, and if it is a site that is prolific, as dating sites are told to us by the police, as prolific for sex trafficking, which is not true as far as any data we've been able to see, and they just can't seem to provide us with any, then what they're really doing is a bait and switch, and it's much more endemic of traffic than anything else. So what we have here is a situation where there's no real proposal for sex. There's a proposal to an adult for it because it's an adult dating site or an adult hookup site. It is not a site that's a train over there coming by. So this has nothing to do at all with proposing sex to a minor. What it is having much to do with is the very problematic practice of pretending to be an adult and then capitalizing on somebody's confusion when you flip it around and flip the script on them. The second element of the statute says that you have to show inappropriate pictures or expose yourself to a minor. Well, when you show up, they're claiming that you want to have sex with a minor, despite the fact that there was nothing in there at all. And when you send pictures, as I did early on, they said that the pictures I sent, like with my bare midriff, well, that was inappropriate. That's what Detective Bauer said to me. Is this appropriate to send to a minor? I said, no, but that's not what I did. Okay. And of course, that didn't matter because they were able to say that it was. And when I say this, that they were able to say, I mean just those words. They said, this is what he did, and the judge asked no questions. We said we didn't, and this is how they got away with it, and the judge didn't care. Okay, how do I know he didn't care? Because he didn't ask any questions. And it's not just my case, it's many, many others. So you have to ask yourself why they don't care when there's no demonstration of proposing sex to a minor, where there is no comments about, did you like my picture? Did you see my picture? Here's a picture, anything like that. They simply grab these things, and if it's inconvenient, they'll even move them around within the conversation. And again, you don't have to believe me. Check out all these other cases. And if your argument is, well, you all have an axe to grind, you're right. We do. We have an agenda, and so do the police. Okay? So the question is, are they doing the right thing or not? It really is that simple. Okay? If they want to do what's right by the public, and if they want to make sure that they really are going to protect kids, which I have every interest in, as well as many others, then don't be hanging out where there are questionable tactics happening, where you have to bait and switch somebody in order to create an event, where you don't wait as you claim you're waiting on the proactive stings for something to happen. Instead, you are the agent to create it into happening. And while we're on the subject, if you are doing something, why should police be engaged in a virtue test? If you are somebody who has a history, let's say, of doing something with a child, then why are you baiting them? And that's like putting alcohol in front of an alcoholic, and then when they start to drink, you arrest them for public drunkenness. I mean, there's so many questions that one can ask about why they're on these sites doing what they're doing. It is not, as they claim, that they're just hanging out there waiting to see what happens to children. Now, what's sad about this is that when the public gets a hold of this and they realize this and they start really getting wise to what cops are doing, cops will change their tactics, to be sure. But then we can start tracking it. For now, what's happening is they're going to the press, the public, and the judges, and they're saying, look, we caught all these people. Clearly, this is a problem. But the problem really should be one of the elements of entrapment, which is, what is the predisposition to have committed the crime to begin with? And that's where if they said, hey, I'm 50, I see your ad says you want younger, I'm 15, how about that? And you say, no, thank you, that should be the end of it. But instead, they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. They keep doing anything from insulting your manhood, goading you, egging you on, asking what's wrong with you. Are you somebody who's not man enough? Or what are you afraid of? All that kind of stuff is something that you would do if you desperately needed to make something happen. And so the question is, why are they abusing computer solicitation? I have argued, isn't there enough of that action on the deep and dark web? Isn't there enough out there that they could be spending some energy and time on? So when you look at computer solicitation, it talks about using devices, very much like the one I'm holding in my hand right now, which is really a computer with a phone app and with a camera app. They also talk about computers, iPads, electronic billboards, whatever the hell those are, and they talk about other things too. But whatever you use, the idea should be that you have a clear and convincing and direct line to talk to children, and then they sit there and they watch and they intervene and they say, hey, that's not allowed, and even cut off the account. But instead, what they do is they go and create these elaborate ruses, okay, where they don't wait for something to happen. They don't cut off an account. They don't even call them up and arrest them, or show up and arrest them, or whatever. In other words, there's no warning at all that they are engaged in entrapment behavior that a person can get. There's nothing that you can be aware of, because they create a scenario where you're confused, where you're asking questions. And remember, on these sites are gamers, there are people who are doing role play. There are CD people, cross dressers. There are fetishists. There are people who are interested in all kinds of legal behavior, which you and I personally, I'm not a fetishist, but people like this stuff. And when they encounter something that's weird and they ask questions, that's not suggesting that they're interested in having sex with children. So again, there's several different things that one needs to consider when you look at the computer solicitation statute. But what is absolutely clear is that the police are using these to create scenarios, using these statutes to abuse people and to gin up their arrest statistics so that they can get their agenda, which is more money to fund more of these programs, so they can supposedly clean things up. And it's going to meet with the exact same result that the war on drugs did. It's going to meet with the exact same result as, the Just Say No campaign and all the other things. Over time, they're going to go back to the way it used to be, where you had common sense understanding of it. You didn't violate the Romeo and Juliet type situations. You didn't try to entrap people. Instead, you waited to see what would happen. But again, the argument among the proactive sting folks, I guess you could call them, the vigilantes and the trolls and the others who attack me online and others, is to say, well, wait, if we didn't allow police to use all these dirty, underhanded tactics, some kid might be hurt. Well, where are all the kids that they have saved? Not the ones that you assume that they would have saved, but for the fact that they showed up in the nick of time or whatever. But where are the statistics? Because we keep asking and they don't have them. Okay? Or they're not willing to share them. And again, you know that if they were rescuing all these kids, they'd be pummeling us with the stats. But instead, they're pummeling us with nonsense and lies. And judges are willing to go along with this because it makes them look good, because there's nothing in the law right now that is the case law where anybody wants to be seen as being tough on crime, certainly not on so-called sex offenders who are apparently, allegedly, perhaps maybe hurting children. Nobody wants to be seen as that. So they're happy to ignore the plain language of the law, which says police cannot impersonate you. They cannot make fake profiles of you without probable cause. They cannot pretend to be children on there. They're supposed to have an actual child in a reactive sting who actually has a reason to be fearful, and that child sits with a police officer and plays their part while the police officer listens in. That's the way it's supposed to run, but that's not the way it actually runs. They're supposed to get probable cause to record you. They're supposed to get probable cause not to violate your rights. And what's curious is that the Roberts Court has done a lot of really questionable rulings, such as Citizens United, which you'll recall was a First Amendment right. We had to have all this dark money, and money is speech, and you have to allow all these people to do this. Well, now you have these nameless, faceless, shapeless entities who can give lots of money. And of course, who are the people who can do it most of all? These are the people who have the most money. So it ends up being that the richest of the rich get to play in the playground in an unparalleled way, shutting out many of the rest of us. Fortunately, we fought back with small donor donations, I guess, small dollar donor donations, and that has helped win the day a lot of times. But in doing this free speech argument, however, they seem to have no interest in the free speech argument online. Okay. So apparently, even if you're doing, a version of the naughty nurse and talking dirty to someone, goading them because you don't believe they're a minor, or even if you do, that's not covered under free speech, even though the Ashcroft versus the Free Speech Coalition said that erotica certainly is free speech. So we have a lot of areas here to cover, and it comes down to there's got to be a way to have child safety where we can protect our kids and still protect our constitutional rights, and still rein in police where they engage in questionable behavior, and yet allow them to do their investigations as needed when they have an actual tip, when they have probable cause. Otherwise, it's too dark and dangerous to go down this path that they continue to go down. And in the digital age, where technology changes so rapidly, we don't know what the next frontier for abuse will be. But eventually, we need to have these cases vacated where people had no contact with children, where they didn't abuse children, where there was nothing that would suggest that they did or would do anything, no predisposition, and where there's a question, where there's a clear question, then those should be vacated. And they're in the thousands by now. This is Norman Michaelation for ICAC Unpacked, 25th day of October 2024. Have a good day.